guys. All right. Well, welcome to everybody. My name is Jessica Thomas, and I'm the program manager for BASE, the Business Accelerator for Sustainable Entrepreneurship, a new program that we're launching here at the Center for Sustainable Enterprise at Kenan-Flagler Business School. I just wanted to welcome everybody and thank you for coming out for this second panel discussion that we're having as part of the pilot phase of BASE. We're really excited about providing a new resource in the Triangle for sustainable businesses, and this is just the second in a series of open public events that we hope to present. We're running a pilot phase of BASE right now through the end of September, but we're planning to launch the program at full scale this fall and continue to offer a wide variety of resources for sustainable entrepreneurs in the area and a number of events like this one. So I'll be interested to hear feedback after this event about other areas that interest sustainable entrepreneurs in the area. We'd really like to thank Walker Lamb, the sponsor for this event, and also the co-host for this event. And I'll be introducing Patrick Parker shortly, who will be presenting first kind of a half-an-hour lecture, giving you some background on Walker Lamb, the firm, the sustainable arm of the practice that they're launching, and also just some background on some of the legal challenges and legal aspects of starting and running a sustainable venture. And after that lecture, we'll be launching a panel discussion with some really exciting entrepreneurs from 3 different ventures that represent kind of some different types of sustainable ventures, and we're hoping that that will be a really engaging and interesting discussion, and followed by some Q&A. But first, I'd like to welcome Patrick Parker, who's an attorney with Walker Lamb, who will be kicking off the session with a lecture. So please join me in thanking Walker Lamb for sponsoring the event, and help me welcome Patrick Parker to the podium. So.
Shuffle the mics here a bit. I want to thank Jessica for allowing me the opportunity to come out and speak with everyone about the legal aspects of starting and running a sustainable business, and also about the new launch of Walker Lamb's corporate sustainability and social entrepreneurship law practice area. It's going to be an exciting time. It's an exciting venture for us, and it's a great add-on to the enhancement of the sustainability movement that we're all seeing right now. Legal support for sustainable businesses. That's what the topic is really about. When I was preparing this presentation, I thought to myself that there's legal support for several types of industries, several types of markets, subsets of those markets, but who is focusing, or what firm is focusing on the needs and the different types of things that sustainable businesses are going to encounter, the types of things that we're going to have to start to address collectively as professional advisors and as businesses as we drive this movement forward. So hopefully I will accomplish that today, and then also outline to you some of the values, added services I think Walker Lamb can provide sustainable businesses. So let's get started with a brief overview of the firm. Walker Lamb is a multi-practice law firm that has been servicing clients in the Research Triangle area for 25 years. Our practice areas expand from corporate and business law, health law, state planning, state administration. I'm sure I'm going to leave out some employment law. We just added a computer law practice, which we're excited about, and of course the launch of the corporate sustainability and social entrepreneurship law practice. We have a long history of representing entrepreneurs and businesses of all sizes, from startups to major corporations. We often advise our clients on matters such as the selection of the most appropriate business entity, to more complex financing transactions, business mergers, sales and acquisitions, and joint venture arrangements. We routinely serve as outside general counsel, assisting business owners with day-to-day operational issues, from contract drafting and review to more specialized legal matters such as trademark registrations and commercial real estate transactions. Enhancing the sustainability movement. For all intents and purposes, I decided that this would be an appropriate title for this particular slide, and I'll tell you why in a second. There are 2 key points that I want to address while I'm on this slide, and the first is, as a firm, we sat down collectively and we wanted to figure out how best to add value to sustainable companies and sustainable businesses. And one of those ways was to utilize our legal expertise to affect change from the inside. Now what that means is we're going to focus on companies wishing to become more sustainable, whether that's existing clients of ours or new clients or just companies who are yet to become sustainable. But how do you go about doing that? Okay? What are our entry strategies, so to speak, to allow that to happen? First, we want to educate businesses about sustainability. Okay? We take for granted that corporations understand the concept of sustainability. Okay? We take for granted that they have a written corporate policy or procedure around sustainability. And my experience has led me to believe that a lot of companies want to do better. They want to add social value. They want to have processes that's better for the environment. But they don't know how to do these things. So as a law firm, we're going to use our direct line of communication with executive level management. As a team of professional advisors, we usually have a direct line to CEOs, presidents of companies, board of directors. We're usually present at shareholders and directors meetings. So it's a great opportunity to start to educate these companies from the inside to affect social change. The next point is the implementation of corporate policies and procedures pertaining to corporate sustainability. Once we've gotten their ear, so to speak, and we started to educate companies and clients about sustainability, now the next step is to move forward and start to implement these policies and procedures relating to corporate sustainability or corporate social responsibility. These policies are varied. They're vast. As many of you know, you probably operate sustainable companies. You know, that can include everything from economic development to diversity initiatives for employees, fair wage, working conditions. So we're going to help these companies start to put these policies in place at an executive board level and also at an operational level further down the corporate chain. The next step, we weren't quite satisfied with just being able to affect change from the inside. We felt like we can do much more. We could really use our legal expertise and we can really focus on this industry and this market and provide value, in-depth value. So we created, and we're launching here today, our Corporate Sustainability and Social Entrepreneurship Law Practice Area. We're going to dedicate a group of lawyers, we're going to dedicate the resources to start to understand sustainability, to start focusing on the issues that's pertinent to sustainable companies and social entrepreneurs. Our corporate sustainability law practice area is focused on entrepreneurs and socially conscious companies that are striving to build sustainable business enterprises. Our clients come to us in various stages of their businesses, from those in the startup phase to those in the growth, expansion, and exit phases of their company. We wanted to make sure we captured the social entrepreneur with a strong vision, a strong social mission, and that person is now trying to push that mission forward and say, I want to apply for-profit business principles to this. How do I go about doing this? And I want to be sustainable at the same time. So we didn't want to exclude startup companies. And we have existing clients and existing companies that's far along in the process. They understand the concept. Okay? They may be working with business consultants and they're now getting their board of directors and their other executive level management to come around. And so we're working with those companies as well. We're going to partner with our sustainable business clients, and as do all of our clients actually. And we want to offer them 6 key things which we think are value-added services that this particular practice group is going to bring. First is access to experienced attorneys who would take the time to learn their business and their industry. We think this is very important that as professional advisors and counselors to these companies that you actually take the time to understand what it is they do, what drives them, what's their mission. It's only then that you will understand that their mission is strongly tied to social innovation. It's only then that you can start to offer different perspectives to allow them to drive that mission forward while making a profit, while being sustainable. Okay? So we're going to place a lot of value on learning the business and the industry. And take, for example, solar power and renewable energy. Okay, that industry is vast. Okay, and if you represent a lot of renewable energy companies or companies focusing on alternative energies, you're going to have to take the time to learn that industry. You're going to have to know what regulations are on the horizons. You're going to have to know what type of suggestions you can make to that company that they capitalize on from a marketing standpoint, from an operational standpoint, from a brand enhancement standpoint, while maintaining sustainability. We're going to also offer quality legal and business advice. And that's really speaking for itself in a lot of ways, in the fact that we've been around for 25 years. Okay, we've partnered with our clients and we've offered them sound business and legal advice, helping to drive their companies forward. And we take a lot of pride in that. We take a lot of pride in our name and the services we provide. Access to a firm focused on the needs of sustainable businesses. What are the needs of sustainable businesses? Need for the professional advisors to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it. Maybe it's a need for their professional advisors to keep abreast of regulations and policies. Okay. Maybe it's a need for their advisors to offer them different ways in which they could change the corporate governance structure of their operations. Maybe it's the need for their professional advisors to help drive what they so strongly believe in. Okay? We're focused on that, and we're going to place a high premium on understanding and providing for the needs of sustainable businesses. The next point is access to a firm that is continuously expanding its knowledge of regulations, laws, and policies affecting sustainable businesses. This is a pretty strong point as well. I guess by now you see that all of our points are strong. But placing a high knowledge or a high value on understanding the knowledge of regulations, laws, and policies affecting sustainable business is very, very important. We seek to provide not only sound legal advice, but solid business advice as well. So we need to understand what regulations are on the horizon. For example, the L3C LLC in North Carolina. A lot have made mention of that and where that is in the process, the regulation process. Excuse me. We need to know about that and what purpose it seeks to provide. I can tell you now that it's sitting in the House Finance Committee and has been sitting there for a while, so it's not too far along, but it did make it out of the Senate. But we want to stay abreast of those regulations, laws, and policies so we can soundly advise our clients. We want to provide our clients contact with investors, lenders, and other sources of capital. This is important to the growth of any company, not just sustainable companies, but it could be more important to sustainable companies as they move forward because they may be scrutinized a little more heavily as they pay more attention to the triple bottom line where traditional lending policies say pay attention to the profits. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're pairing our clients with investors and lenders who understand what they're doing, understand the concept of sustainability, and want to help them drive their mission forward. We want to offer them contact with other professional service providers like certified public accountants, financial advisors, and business consultants. This parallels the previous point in that you want to make sure that your client's professional team as a whole collectively understands where they're headed and what they're doing. So we want to make sure we're partnering with our clients and give them this advice from a tax perspective, from a financial planning perspective, because all of these pieces go hand in hand and making sure that the company will succeed. Our Corporate Sustainability and Social Entrepreneurship Law Practice Group is supplemented by many of our firm's existing practice areas. I mentioned earlier that we have a strong corporate and general business practice, so it's going to be supplemented in part by the knowledge we gleaned over the years from representing various types of businesses and corporations. It's going to be supplemented by commercial real estate transactions practice. A lot of sustainable companies, as is the case with most corporations or clients, at some point are going to enter into some type of real estate transaction, though it's a simple lease or purchase of a facility, a manufacturing plant. So you need to be abreast of that, and we're going to supplement our knowledge in that area as well. Corporate governance is a big issue. That's where you come in and you take a look at the governance structure from the board of directors or the managers if it's an LLC. You're going to take a look at their operations, take a look at their subcommittees. Let's see how best to structure this, and let's make sure that that the actions of our governing bodies is consistent with our sustainability mission or purpose. Employment and labor. This is a big practice area for sustainable companies because many are focused on stock options, other employee incentive plans. Just left a meeting with the base entrepreneurs, and we discussed some of these issues as well. So we want to make sure that we're supplementing our corporate sustainability practice with a focus on the employment and labor law aspect. Entity formation and organization. We had a lively discussion about entity formation and organization as well. As you know, that it has no perfect structure right now for sustainable companies. Nonprofits don't allow you to receive the type of capital financing that you need to drive the company forward. For-profit entities can sometimes limit the social mission. So we have to do what we can with the structures that we have in place and organizing these companies to try to balance the two until we can get some legislation passed that will provide us an alternative corporate structure. Financing, we hit that a little bit as well, pairing our clients with lenders and third-party investors. Joint ventures, I had a discussion about that earlier to some degree, wherein you may have two sustainable companies who want to work together for one common purpose for a limited time, in which event we may engage in a joint venture arrangement of some sort, either via contract or via the formation of a third entity. Mergers, sales, and acquisitions. Growing sustainable companies are no different than others in the sense that one of their growth strategies may be via acquisition. Okay, they may actually merge with other companies to grow that way as well, or capture some part of a market that they did not have previously. Regulation and policy interpretation. This is another big issue, and you'll see the term regulation throughout these slides, because a lot that's focused around sustainability is really regulation-driven or regulatory issues. That gives us some of the advantages or burdens us with some of the things we have to deal with as sustainable companies. Tax credits for renewable energy being one. It seems straightforward on its face until you attempt to apply it in some cases. So we want to make sure that we're staying abreast of these regulations and these policies as well, and offering our clients some feedback as to what they mean. Okay, it's not uncommon for our clients to say, hey, there's a new regulation on the horizon. Could you interpret it? Let us know what it means, how it affects our companies. We may want to take advantage of it. And even if our clients are not asking us, we want to stay abreast of that so we can offer that advice willingly and freely. Nonprofit organization law. We have some outstanding attorneys in the firm who focus on nonprofit organization law and have been doing so for years. So that's a great asset to this group or this particular practice area. Because in a lot of ways, the missions of nonprofits are similar to some of the same missions that sustainable companies may have. Tax law is another area. I mentioned tax credits early, and interpretation of IRS regulations is pretty important also. So we're going to supplement this new practice area with our knowledge in tax law. Contracts and commercial agreements. This is an area that affects all companies yet again. We're going to supplement this area with our knowledge of contracts and commercial agreement review and negotiation to help assist our clients in driving their mission forward. So in conclusion, Walker Lamb is committed to enhancing the sustainability movement by first educating businesses about corporate sustainability and by providing quality legal advice to sustainable businesses as part of our corporate sustainability and social entrepreneurship law practice area. To sum it up, there is legal support for sustainable businesses, and we've taken an opportunity to form this new practice group to show our dedication to enhancing the sustainability movement. And if you guys have any, we're going to get to a Q&A session briefly here, but if you have a need to, contact me. My email address is there, and my office number is there as well. So at this point, I would like to open it up for a brief Q&A. I think we do have about 5 minutes before we move on to the panel discussion. So are there any questions regarding the practice area? Yes.
How many attorneys do you think at Walker Lamb will devote full time to this area of practice?
It'd be a minimum of 2. at this point, and it's going to be more that's going to practice in it, but not full time.
I know us are well aware budgeting issues are always big for startups and
Sure.
small businesses, and so I'm wondering what resources you offer to work with businesses that may not have a huge legal
Sure. Well, I can speak for myself. We are a firm that focuses on the needs of small businesses as well, so we're well aware of that fact. I, for one, in my practice, try to take a realistic approach when I'm meeting with my clients, new clients, for the first time to see where they are in their business, what's their potential for growth, what's their dedication to their particular venture. And I try to keep in mind that fact when I'm quoting a cost to them, or if I'm trying to create an alternative billing arrangement for them, to help drive that company forward with the understanding that if we can get it going, then maybe it can start to stand on its own without breaking the bank too early on. So I make an effort to try and work with companies on that end. More questions? Yes.
You mentioned that we sort of have to wait through the current legislation to sort of, I don't know, hybrid run it.
Sure.
Is there anything really exciting in legislation right now?
I have not seen anything that has caused my ears to perk up, and I'll tell you why. When you have this balance between trying to fit the nonprofit structure into a for-profit structure and call it something different, and when you do that, you start to run afoul of tax laws and regulations. So while there has been some creative ideas as to how to get the operational structure down, you still have the tax implications on making that work. And I'm just not sure where that's going to go. I know there's a lot of ideas out there, and we'll just sort of have to hang in there and see what happens in the meantime and work with the standard that we have. Questions? Yes.
What kind of effort are you going to dedicate towards lobbying for sustainable regulations or kind of help with
We have not discussed that in the practice, but I'll take note of it. We have not discussed lobbying. More questions? I do appreciate your time. Oh, sorry, Tom.
What kinds of things have you done as a company yourself to become more sustainable?
You know, I'm glad you asked that question. As a company, what we've done in learning about sustainability, and when I was speaking earlier to people make the assumption that businesses understand the concept of sustainability, in learning about this, we started to take a look at what we're doing, and we are now in the initial phases of realizing, hey, how can we become more sustainable? Okay, it could be as simple as reducing the amount of paper we use as a law firm. Okay, it has affected our individual habits. So we are living proof of that first step of education. So now you have to turn it into action. So, okay, thank you very much. We will move directly into the panel discussion. There are no other questions. And joining us on the panel discussion are we have David Bungie with PV,
Nice to meet you.
Tom Sanith with TS Designs, and we have Brett Smith with Counterculture Coffee. So I need to speak up, huh? I'm sorry. These gentlemen are going to share with you some of their experiences operating sustainable companies and some of the legal aspects that they've encountered. As we go through this presentation, I'm going to fill in the gaps with why these questions or why their responses are relevant from a legal standpoint to provide that value-added service. The first topic, gentlemen, we're going to discuss is going to be the importance of selecting the proper legal entity. Tell us briefly what your current entity type is and why you've chosen that particular entity to operate your company.
All right.
Currently, we're an LLC, and I mean, we chose that for pretty straightforward reasons. The liability obviously being a big issue. The company currently has just one founder, and so there's a lot of advantages to doing the LLC versus a standard sole proprietorship. I think it's also kind of an important choice for the kind of customers that we're going to be that we generally work with. These are larger companies, and so when they put us under some scrutiny, it is more advantageous to be an LLC versus a sole proprietorship.
David,
Sure.
actually, can you kind of tell a bit about the business? And how
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, sorry. So we're a project developer that does large-scale solar installations, and we focused mainly on the East Coast. Been working primarily in North Carolina, but also have a few projects ongoing in some other states.
Good afternoon. I'm Brett Smith. I'm with Counterculture Coffee. We're a wholesale coffee company based in Durham, and we roast and sell to restaurants, coffee shops, grocery stores, natural food stores, specialty stores. I co-founded the company in 1995, and now currently we have members of the team based in New York, in Philadelphia, D.C., Charlotte, Asheville, and down to Atlanta. When we formed in 1995, we chose an S-Corp. At that time, LLCs were a relatively new structure, and we chose an S-Corp for the tax reasons, so that we wouldn't get taxed as a corporation and on an individual basis. And at the time, it was just two of us, a partner and myself. Since then, my partner's moved on and is out of the business, and we're still an S-Corp.
I'm with TS Designs, and we are a screen printing company in Burlington, North Carolina. Primarily, our product is organic cotton, made in the United States, printed with environmentally friendly inks. We have a proprietary ink system that we use, plus standard water-based inks. We've been in business over 30 years, and when I started as a sole proprietorship. After about 2 years, I formed a C Corp, and we operated under that for 15 or so years, and then moved to we're currently now an S Corporation. And we did that because when we moved from proprietorship to a C Corp, it was we thought to provide some liability protection, but I'm not sure that actually worked that way. We then moved to an S Corporation to avoid a double taxation. The tax laws have changed, and now everything flows through to the partners. I have an equal partner in the business, and so currently we are a S Corporation.
Good. As they pointed out, in selecting a proper legal entity, you want to pay attention to the liability protection and then the tax burdens that's going to flow as a result of that. And they all had separate or different reasons for choosing the entities that they've selected. I will make one distinction. Tom mentioned C Corp versus S Corp, and that's merely a tax designation as to how the corporation is taxed, and not a separate entity, so to speak, for anyone who may be confused about that difference. Tell us a little bit about the ease or difficulty in operating those companies from a legal standpoint, i.e. having annual meetings of your shareholders and directors. Is your entity type pretty easy to operate from a legal standpoint, do you think?
I'll jump in. In certain respects, it's very easy. We're both part of the BASE program, and despite having been in business for 13 years, I learned some things today that we might not be doing as prudently as we should. At the end of the day, there are certain aspects of it that I wouldn't be able to keep up with. I don't necessarily want to keep up with in terms of the laws, and we have outside attorneys, and for the most part, it's a pretty simple set of, in terms of annual meetings, there's a pretty simple checklist that you can stick to. Oftentimes that checklist might change, and That's our attorney's job to keep us posted. In terms of the annual shareholder meetings, I'm now 100%. I own 100% of the shares, so I do meet with myself, but you have to note that, and you have to keep a record. And while it might seem silly, there are certain reasons for it. And at the end of the day, it's a pretty simple process. But I learned today that there are some things that I didn't realize. We're not horribly out of compliance, but I think we can change things, improve things a little bit. But for the most part, as an S Corp, we found it pretty simple to operate legally as an S Corp. The tax, one issue does deal with income, and the income does flow through the corporation to your own tax return. So there are issues with having a company tax return and then your own tax return, and that's where I fall with the legal advice of the accountants and the attorneys. But there have been no major surprises in terms of operating as an S Corp. It's been fairly simple.
Brett, how do you resolve differences when you meet with yourself if you disagree?
Long meetings.
The formalities of a corporation are something that we could certainly use some improvement on, but it's fairly easy when there's two main shareholders and you share an office together. As long as we've been in business, we share an office, so we can just say, hey, you want to take a look at this lease? All right, let's sign it, like that. And so you can execute your agreements because you're always together. So it's been fairly easy. The formality, we probably could ratchet up the formality just a little bit because we do it more on a casual day-to-day basis.
David, operating an LLC is pretty.
Yeah, I would agree with all the statements so far. I mean, when you're at a pretty small stage, it's fairly easy because you're interacting with all the decision makers on a pretty regular basis. However, I would say that I also learned a lot today about how important it is to at least take the step of documenting a lot of the decisions that are made so that you have something to fall back on in case you ever run afoul of the IRS.
On that note, let's move along to business capitalization. Explain briefly how your company was initially capitalized. Did you sell shares to owners, third-party financing, debt capitalization, a combination of both?
I originally started the business with personal funds and then started borrowing. We do conventional bank borrowing. It's typically how we fund it. We've not sold shares. There have been times where our business has not done as well, and so personally we loan money back to the company. So sometimes we're the bank. So it's mostly conventional bank loans, though.
When we started, I put some money into the company as a loan. My partner at the time, we both put in a nominal amount. I think it was $1,000 as equity. We also were able to go out and secure bank financing through BB&T through the SBA program. So the startup for us was a combination of our own money, and then we just issued shares to ourselves. And we've stuck with conventional bank financing or internal cash.
We're a typical bootstrap approach. It's all been personally financed by the founder up to this point. We have given a lot of thought to looking at other ways to capitalize the company as we've developed our business plan and our business strategy. And so I think we've started taking some steps to prepare ourselves to at least consider the option of equity investment at a later stage. But right now, we're primarily internally financed.
Sure. And the importance of adequate capitalization goes to maintaining the integrity of the corporate shield. Thinly capitalized companies are placing themselves at risk of having their corporate shield pierced. So we discussed that earlier at the closed session about making sure that whether it's equity capitalization or debt capitalization, that you find a way to inject some cash into the company that will allow it to indeed operate, notwithstanding the practical implications of not having money in the company and its ultimate failure as a result thereof. Let's talk a little briefly about corporate governance and the role of your executive board. Discuss the makeup of your current executive team and share some insight into how that team has helped driving your company mission.
We currently have a board of directors, of which I'm a member, and one other person, a member of the team, is the only other legal director, official board member. He's also the only other officer of the company. We have two folks that are outside advisors, and they said specifically that they did not want to be members of the board for legal reasons. We did not want to get board of directors insurance, and it's worked well for us. In terms of the corporate governance, with the two officers of the company, and we both can sign legally binding documents, and for the most part, a majority of the contracts the two of us will review, but the other person that's an officer, he is our director of coffee, our director of green coffee. So he is making contracts every day that affect the company, and they're all legally binding because he is a corporate officer. And so I have a lot of trust in him. He's very good at what he does. But for us, a board of directors has been critical, and the outside advisors has been very crucial for us in terms of our growth, in terms of advisory capacity.
When I think of executive management team, probably the one that's worked best for us is we meet almost every month with our accountant, our banker. And so it's my partner, myself, my accountant, and banker. And that's primarily been our one type of executive team. Of course, internally we have operational departments that we meet. We've had some board of director activity before, which really was to avoid the legal part, was more of a board of advisor. And we did that for a short period of time. I would say now that our executive team is really composed of myself, my partner, our banker, our accountant, and then mentors. And particularly in the sustainable business, you need mentors. You need somebody out there that can guide you, can give you the information, who can educate you. This is how we were introduced to the triple bottom line. It's how we're introduced to a lot of the speakers and the books and the things that we read and new business directions to take place. So I would probably say best that piece that we hadn't had before was we have several excellent mentors.
Well, we're at a much earlier stage than either Counterculture or TS Designs, so we're still sort of wearing a lot of hats and trying to figure out exactly where everybody's roles lie at any given time, whether it be a manager or an officer or so forth. And that's been a little bit of a struggle, but I think we're making some headway in it. And one thing to add to the mentors, I definitely agree that that's very important, and I think events like this and the organization that BASE is putting together here has actually been a huge benefit for us in that regard.
And to bring this full circle, the reason we're discussing this now is to talk about the structure and the duties and the obligations of a board of directors or managers in an LLC or your executive team, and the charge that they have to actually manage the company. That's their mandate. And they will appoint officers who will go out and provide the day-to-day operational resources or services to make that happen, with the shareholders or the members of the LLC actually owning the entity itself. So it's a good sign that these three panelists have an idea and can dictate or discuss with us the makeup of their management and executive team, because it shows that they have the processes in place to remain compliant with existing corporate law. Real briefly, what are some of the duties you place upon the members of your board of directors or your management team, be it outside advisors?
Well, the duty for our banker sometimes is to tell us no. And the duty for our accountant sometimes is, you've got to be kidding. Why would you do that? But on a day-to-day basis, between my partner and myself, we basically use a divide and conquer. And so as far as running a corporation, I tend to look after the finances and the legal, but then a month from now it might be reverse. It kind of depends on points of interest. The day-to-day operation is divided between employees, and I handle the equipment and some of the design of some of the equipment. My partner handles sales and marketing. And so as we evolve through 30 years of business, we sometimes trade seats. But generally, I'm the finance, internal engineering side, and he's the sales outside part of the business. We just seek, if there's something that falls between our expertise, we just go out there and seek professional counsel, just like someone like yourself, or accountant, or banker, or whatever it might be.
I've relied heavily on the outside advisors over the years. One in particular who doesn't really know much about coffee, but has an incredible mind and is a great thinker. And he is someone that that we get along personally, and he has the capacity to tell me that I'm being a complete idiot, and I don't take offense to it. And through the years, I have called on the outside advisor, this person, to come in certain situations. I eventually did buy the co-founder of the company. I bought his shares, and this outside advisor was a great sounding board for that. He actually helped me structure the deal. Recently, with the management team, and we have a management team made up of 6 folks at the company, we had a big issue, a big topic that we were contemplating, potentially a change in direction, and we brought in this advisor as a fresh set of eyes and ears to really help us see the picture in a different way, and it's proven invaluable for us. We just added to the outside advisory group with someone that is not only a good thinker but has real practical experience with a new channel that we're pursuing that has done it with 3 different companies. In terms of the executive team, we try to split up the responsibilities. Over the years, we've learned that clarity is a very good thing, and we're a lot more efficient if we define roles, define expectations, and communicate. It sounds simple, but it's hard to do. So the day-to-day is the management team, and then the outside advisors are really my sounding board for when I'm stuck and I need a fresh set of a fresh brain to think about something.
I currently work with the founder and manager on a lot of the marketing and sales strategy and business development, and we also have another officer who works more on the operational strategy and the financial side of the business. We've definitely gotten a lot of support from advisors, especially on the legal side, when we've encountered a lot of issues that are beyond our expertise, which is somewhat common in our industry, given the heavy emphasis of the regulatory situation and how that can affect our business. And for the most part, that's worked pretty well up to this point. I think one of the reasons that it has worked is that the founder and manager is willing to use us internally as that sounding board, and he's very open to taking our advice and discussing the direction of the company pretty openly and pretty frankly. So that's been helpful.
Good. Let's talk about contracts and the contracts you use in your company. Discuss the importance of sound contracts to your business and how your company's contracts are drafted and negotiated.
Go ahead.
In terms of contracts, I think that the largest contracts we have will be our commitment to purchase coffee and the way we structure where we purchase coffee is we'll work with farmers, and we'll, as a crop comes in, and we make the decision as to what coffees we'll buy. And then there are intermediaries between the farm in Central South America, Indonesia, and Africa to when it arrives in our warehouse. And we are committing to purchasing, for instance, a container of, let's say, 300 bags, each bag weighing 150 pounds of coffee. Now, a lot can happen to the coffee along the way. An example is in Rwanda, we selected some coffee, and they were taking the container, a tractor trailer, from the mill to the port, and the driver decided he got another job opportunity. And he pulled over on the side of the road, and literally a container of coffee was missing for 4 months, and no one knew where it was. And so fortunately we had protection in our contracts, and that's not an uncommon occurrence for us. And we structure the contracts. I mean, obviously there's a long history in coffee, so we weren't reinventing contracts when we were working with brokers, but we certainly have taken contracts and had legal counsel review them. In addition, contracts with leases. We have leases for property in five different buildings in 5 different locations. In all those, I take them and have our legal counsel take a look at them. God bless lawyers. Usually they come back with 5,000 changes from the original lease. But at the end of the day, they are relevant, and they have proven to be, certainly, they protect us, even though it's full of legalese. So if there's a contract of that level, we're certainly going to take it to an outside attorney and have them review it. And then hopefully, and I play the dummy, and I talk to him, and I walk through it, and if I can understand it and it makes sense, then that's sort of the litmus test.
We have a number of contracts that we enter into over the years. Some are quite simple and some are complex. For the complex ones, we do seek legal advice. Some are very simple. I signed one today. In fact, when I was invited to be on this panel, I'm going, what do I know about legal issues? And sure enough, I'm signing a contract this morning. It's to install a large solar array. So that contract is an agreement between the installer of what he will do and what we're obligated to do. So on that level, this is a one-page contract. It's pretty simple. I can read it. I can understand it. It just states what our performances will be. Sometimes we get extensive contracts. I received one from a company that we used to do a lot of contract business for, and it was unbelievable. It was several pages in light gray ink. I had to go buy a magnifying glass, and it was extremely biased in the way it was written. I didn't need legal advice for that. We just scratched out what we didn't like, and we still ended up doing business with them. What you have to do is, even though you can contract with an attorney or a law firm, you need to read these things. You have to understand them at least at some level, and they will put you to sleep. Excuse me, Badger.
I'll let you slide.
A lot of legalese, but it's important to understand it because for the most part, take a lease for example. The first time you read a lease, you're going, what could this stuff possibly mean? But over time, this is there for a particular merit. There's some reason that these issues are important. So our contracts sometimes are presented to us to sign if it's performance for a particular company, which used to be more of our old branding model. Or we may initiate the contract when we want to hold someone, and we use the contract as a formal agreement of what we've discussed. Quite often, mostly it's just an agreement between two parties that we understand what we've agreed to. So we do seek legal counsel, and we pick the counsel based on the nature. If it's something very simple, like a lease or rental property, we have one attorney that we might use also for our wills. If we have something dealing with our patents or trademarks, it's an appropriate company for the same thing. If it's complex, like a buy-sell agreement, we choose a different attorney. So we actually have 3 firms we work with.
I think we actually were unfortunate enough to learn the importance of contracts the hard way early on. We started to get engaged in some supply and distribution arrangements, and didn't really take the time to put together a good contract early on, and kind of did some things on more of a promise and a handshake. And I can say from experience that that's certainly not something I would do again, because you always think things are going to go great until they go bad, and then if the framework isn't set in place, everybody immediately goes to their lawyers, and it causes a really tense, awkward situation that nobody really wants on either side. So I would definitely recommend taking the time to establish good contracts so that you are covered. On the other end of the spectrum, when we are looking at larger projects and dealing with larger customers, I mean, we've gone completely to the opposite, where it's lots of legalese and lots of interaction with our counsel to make sure that everything is in place, because that's what those clients expect, and they definitely will try and take advantage of a contract that isn't set up appropriately. So.
Good. Thanks. As you can see, each one of these panelists have placed a high emphasis on utilizing their attorneys for the drafting and negotiation of their complex agreements. So it's important for all companies, not only sustainable companies, to recognize the trouble, or you can get into, or the trouble you can avoid with a sound contract. So I would encourage everyone to utilize the resources of their professional advisors in drafting these contracts. These contracts are key to the operations of your business. So let's shift gears here and talk a little bit about your trademarks and your brand protection. Discuss your company's trademarks and the importance of protecting your brand.
We currently have 3 trademarks, 3 patents, 1 trademark, and a pending trademark. It's absolutely vital to our business. Our patents are on a process called rehance. It's where we can print a garment, then dye it, and alter the dye. The 3 patents, we own the patents. The rehance is the trademark associated with the patents. The pending trademark is for a brand we use on our T-shirts called Clothing Facts, and it lists the ingredients in the shirt, including no sweatshop labor, no plasticizers, things like that. We think it's absolutely important to differentiate ourselves, to brand ourselves. Our old business was branded business. It was Nike, Gap, Polo, Champion. If you think about that, I can rattle off names that you all know. That is branding at its best. In our market, we've done branding, but in a very niche market. So it's real important that as this market, the sustainable market, the green market grows, that you don't get overtaken by the competition. So it's a real effort for us to keep a leadership role and protect what we've paid dearly for. The development of new processes take lots and lots of time and lots of dollars.
We currently have 3 trademarks, and we have a couple of trademarks pending. We registered the name of the company and the mark early on. The name Counterculture has become we kind of stumbled across the name, but we really like the name in terms of a coffee company, and we've tried hard to protect it. And as we grow into new markets and grow on grocery store shelves or coffee shop shelves, it's critical. And it's interesting, we got after we registered the trademark, it took us a few years to get it. We were 3 years into business, and I told the story earlier. We were in line for it. It was owned at the time Counterculture Cafe, which was we couldn't get Counterculture Coffee because it was too similar to Counterculture Cafe. That was owned by JCPenney's. They had purchased another department store that had a Counterculture Cafe restaurant, but we realized they weren't actively using it, and we just kind of held our breath and crossed our fingers and got in line to get the name. And Captain Jack's Counterculture Seafood Shop was ahead of us. They're somewhere out in California. And when it was time to renew your position in line, they didn't renew. We got to the front of the line. Unfortunately, we got the trademark. But interestingly enough, over the years, there have been other countercultures that have approached us saying, the first one was a group that makes skateboard wear and skateboards out in California. And they said, you're too close to us. And said, well, we own the name. And so they went away. And then five years later, they were purchased by a huge company, an international conglomerate that wanted to go into the energy drink segment and to the skateboard niche. So everybody's probably heard of Red Bull. They wanted to come out with a counterculture energy drink. And what we did is and they had counterculture for certain uses. So what we ended up doing is we got them to allow us to reserve counterculture coffee, counterculture tea, counterculture chocolate, counterculture espresso, whatever we thought we might use. And they could do an energy drink because we don't plan on an energy drink. And we also were just recently approached by a group in New York City. We have a line of coffees called Sanctuary. They have a restaurant called Sanctuary Tea, and they're trying to, and we're talking to them about doing some agreement to allow them to, if they want to, use Sanctuary Tea but not go into coffee. At the end of the day, we haven't spent a lot of money protecting the mark. We haven't had any lawsuits but at the end of the day, it's served us well that we have had it protected because other people certainly would have used it.
We currently don't have any trademarks. We do have a business method patent on a financial model that we use for the projects that we work on. As far as trademarks go, I think that's something that's definitely important, and especially after today, I know I'm going to put some more emphasis on it when I get back with the rest of the group. And it is something that we've thought about from a branding perspective. In our industry, there really aren't many established brands yet, and we would like to take the opportunity now to go ahead and protect our name and start establishing a strong brand here on the East Coast, because the market is very young out here still. And just speaking briefly to the name, it's actually, we went to our design firm and we weren't even really sure we wanted to use PV as the name, and went back and forth on it for about 2 or 3 months, and really just used it because we couldn't come up with anything better. We finally got kind of tired of trying to come up with it, and just wanted to go ahead. And now I'm kind of realizing that it is one of those things that gets set in stone pretty quickly and pretty easily. You use it when you go out, and as soon as you've made a decision, it really is valuable to protect it so that you can start protecting what you've worked for. So.
They gave us a broad range of how the trademarks and intellectual property plays into their company and how it adds value. And like Brett mentioned, it seems like he's been approached or quietly attacked a couple of times on his trademark, so he was secure in that the registration was proper and that he could defend it if he had to. So I think it's important for sustainable businesses and people who have companies in general to understand the value in your mark and to make some effort to protect that mark. If no other act is taken, you should at least affix the SM or the TM subscript to your logo design or your name to place the world on notice that you are asserting some rights in the mark, okay, pending registration. Do you guys want to share a little bit about the registration process so the audience can get an idea of how long it is and how detailed it can be, or did you sort of have your lawyers do that for you?
I don't know. We do. We have a registered trademark. We have the register mark on the rehance process. I did want to add one thing about our patents. We have better protection than the patents. It's hard to do. And what we have found over time is we feel like there's a few companies who've attempted to duplicate it. We're a small company. It would be hard to defend ourselves legally. I think if somebody really wanted it, they could take the bone away from the small dog. But what we have is we have something better than patent protection. It's difficult to do.
In terms of the process, the last couple that we've done, we've worked with attorneys, and they've basically just told us what we need to provide. And the first go-around, we had to provide examples of the product, of the mark in use. So on the packaging, we had to, I believe, provide letterhead. So they had to get samples of it in use. Overall, it was a fairly simple process in terms of what we had to provide. But we didn't follow the legal documents. We had outside counsel take care of that aspect of it.
I can't really speak to the registration process, but I can speak a little bit to the patent process. And my advice on that would be to work with a lawyer that you trust on it, and make sure that you're confident in his ability to write a good patent and give you the protection that you need. There's a lot of flexibility that goes into that, and you want as much protection as you can possibly get. And be sure to read over it and make sure it covers what you wanted it to cover, and make sure that he understands the idea that you're going for.
Good, awesome. Well, let's move into some general discussion and sort of a segue to the Q&A. What other basic legal hurdles have your company encountered, and how did you go about overcoming those challenges or hurdles?
Well, I think what could have been a potentially challenging time with the company from a legal perspective came when I bought my partner, bought his shares. We discussed this in our meeting. When we formed the company, we did a 50-50 ownership, which is very challenging under any circumstances, for any number of reasons. And while I think we had great success, we reached a point where we had reached a crossroads, and we had to make a change with the ownership structure. What we did when we set up the company is we created, or we had built into the operating agreement, or the shareholder agreement, a buy-sell agreement, and you mentioned this. And I don't know if you've heard of a buy-sell agreement, but basically what it did was it created a mechanism that in the event that one of the shareholders wanted out, the mechanism was in place. There was a formula there for valuation. There was a time frame for payout. Basically, the deal was negotiated or in place so that when the time comes, if you do have to fall back on it, and a lot of times you need to fall back on that just because of life changes. Someone has to move. And when you're first starting, you think that everything's going to go perfectly, and it doesn't. And there are always challenges. And for us, we ended up sitting down at a table, and we had this mechanism over here, so to speak, and we knew it was there, and we knew that we were gonna that if we couldn't work things out, that there was something in place where a transaction would occur. And as a result, we sat down and structured a wonderful deal that really didn't match what was in the buy-sell agreement, but the buy-sell agreement was there. And so I look back at some of we've made plenty of mistakes, but one of the things that we did that was probably helped the company more than anything was have that in place. And I have a lot of friends in the coffee industry, and there are a lot of situations where you have small startups, or you have a founder and they bring on someone else and give them shares. And in the last 2 or 3 years, I've had 3 different friends of mine who came into a coffee company later on, got shares, 20-30% of the company, but ended up wanting to buy out or buy a larger portion or get a controlling interest. And they approached the majority owner, and the majority owner just said no. And in fact, you're out. I don't want you as my partner anymore. And so there was no legal mechanism. And then at that point, it's a horrible tone that's been set. So they had to sit down at that point, negotiate what the value of the shares were and work out a deal. And it's probably going to kill one of the companies that I know. So that one little bit of legal advice that we had early on from our attorney has I look back at that and I thank my lucky stars that we had that in place.
We have no legal hurdles. I'm just teasing. As I sit here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to see if I have everything covered, because what you do is you're so focused on running your business day to day that these legal issues take the back seat. And, I don't stay awake at night wondering what's going to happen if my partner dies before I do, or gets divorced, or if I can't get divorced. I've done that once. My wife will kill me. So what happens is these things do change, and you have to think about the what-ifs. And that's really what your strategy should be for your company, to think in terms of what happens if. And I like to think of it, when you think about buy-sell agreements and succession planning and things like that, it's kind of like your backseat driver saying, hey, watch out for that, watch it, and you swerve and you miss it and say, see, I wasn't going to hit it. If you do that advanced planning, it helps you avoid the problem. So I'm going to go back, because we do have a buy-sell agreement, but it's outdated and it's probably not inclusive of everything. Because what can happen is your valuation, how you value a company, is a great deal different when you have intellectual properties. What's the value of a patent? It's what anybody will pay for it. So what happens is we may have to go in and periodically review it a little better than we've done. So part of it is at least thinking these things out, but the other part is closing the loopholes, because you can think that you have plans only to find that they're actually very incomplete. So I need to do some homework.
I guess I would echo those sentiments for the most part. We're, as I said, a bit younger, so we haven't really encountered a lot of legal hurdles at the moment. But I think that there's a lot of things that we need to do as we continue to grow to make sure that we don't run into a lot of those legal hurdles. And I'd really have to agree. I mean, you are really so focused, especially at the very early stages, where everybody's wearing 5 different hats and has a lot more operational responsibilities that they have to worry about, that you really don't take the time to consider the legal issues. So if you're planning to start something, it really is good to take the time and make sure you have the legal advice, or at least know the basics of what you need to do.
Awesome. What advice pertaining to legal matters would you give someone wanting to start a sustainable business, or start and run a sustainable business?
Well, I mean, I think obviously the theme here today has been seek good legal counsel. Don't guess. Don't make it up on the fly. And back to the buy-sell, we were trying to be realists and try to plan for the different scenarios. One sort of phase that we're going through now, as we've grown from Durham and now we have offices in other cities, the whole set of legal issues that we're running into, and we just realize we've made it part of our process to try to, just like you said, to close the loop. We realized that we had a lot of exposure. We install brewing and grinding equipment in customer locations, and there were certain aspects of that we were liable for that we didn't anticipate. And unfortunately, some of these things, I guess the unfortunate part is we're learning the hard way. The fortunate part is the lessons haven't been too severe. Things, for instance, like we install equipment, and it sounds obvious, but we had a pipe, some tubing that was connected to a water line, and this was a new installation, and the customer wasn't there for 3 days, and they came in on Monday or Tuesday, and they were flooded, next door was flooded. Now, we have insurance for that, but the reality was we could have protected ourselves, we could have protected the customer, we could have done things differently. And everything is fine, it's not a catastrophic event. But like we've said, you get running so fast, and you don't take the time to stop and really go back and close the loops, because after a while, a lot of loops open up, a lot of holes are there, and we've been fortunate enough not to have anything drastic. We've had some personnel issues. We had an employee that left the company and brought, I'm not sure if it was a full lawsuit, but it turns out that the way we had compensated that employee for their specific job was not correct. And I don't remember the details. We either paid them hourly or by salary, and we shouldn't have been for the job classification. We paid what we owed the employee. We were happy to do that. But we went back and looked at all of our job positions in all aspects of employees, and wish we had done that sooner. So I would say from a legal perspective is make it part of your operations, make it part of a quarterly review. It doesn't have to be extensive, but maybe just do a quick checklist, and I think you can probably save yourself a lot of heartache and allow you to focus on the business.
The reality of any small business is we operate on a handshake, we operate on trust, we operate on relationships, and everything we do will never be taken care of in a contract. But one thing you have to remember is when you have a contract, you can't then skip over and go back to handshake. For example, if you sign a lease and it's 12 pages long, and then your landlord, whether it's you or someone else, says, oh, by the way, we'll take care of this. You've handled almost all of it legally, and now you're off on that verbal piece. It's hard, you get confused, and you can mix those two. So if it's legal, keep it legal. If it's by trust, keep it by trust. And you can move from one to the other, but I think a lot of people, even working with my children who sign leases or agreements, I'll look at it and I'll say, does it protect both parties? And then something will come up and they say, well, they'll do this. And I'm going, is it in the contract? And they say, well, no. I said, then why did you sign the contract? Your contract is for you to understand what your agreement is. And when you make another part of that agreement outside of the contract, and the reason why I say that may not be the correct legal advice, but I think you can understand how we can fall into that. You buy something or you sign a contract, and then you're, oh, and by the way, we'll throw in this. Well, if you've just signed something, why isn't it there? So I think mixing the two is where it becomes confusing. But the reality is there's only a few times where you need to have this written agreement. The rest of it is always going to be trust and relationships.
I would say that it's very easy to get caught in the moment, and it's very easy to get into the momentum of the environment and the situation very early on. But from a strategic point of view, it's really important to consider a lot of these issues right up front. I mean, when you're developing that business plan or getting ready to start the company, take a week or have a few meetings to go through this checklist and talk about some of these issues instead of putting them on the back burner or saying, well, we'll deal with that when we get to it. Because it can have a pretty large impact on your strategy in the long run. I know in our case, we've had a couple times where we've actually had to change our strategy a bit based on finding out that we weren't set up the right way or we didn't have things structured the way that they necessarily should have been. So luckily in our case as well, it's not been a brutal way to learn, but it's never the ideal way to learn either. So.
On that note, we're going to open it up for about 10 minutes or so for some question and answers from the panelists or myself.
For my selling agreement that you guys set up, how did that come about? Did your attorneys at the very beginning say, hey, we're choosing a business type entity, and oh, by the way, this is standard for setting up a successful business? Or did you bring it up later? And secondly, what about the valuation? You said you
The idea for the buy-sell came from actually a third party, not the attorney. It was a friend of the family. This was the situation is I was just out of business school here at Carolina, and my partner was someone that I did not know that well, and we both seemed to have similar interests and seemed to be on the same page. But it was a new venture with I did not know, hadn't known this person forever, and it was 50-50. And as I brought up 50-50 with someone, they said buy-sell, and so we approached the attorney, and the attorney understood completely the need for it. In terms of the valuation, the specific process that was detailed in the buy-sell agreement was for both parties, for me to pick an appraiser, for my partner to pick an appraiser, and I believe there's a mechanism in place. If they were too far off, then those two appraisers would get a third, and so it would kind of balance out. At the end of the day, we did not use that method. And instead, we came up with a valuation based on what we knew in the coffee industry and what we felt was fair. And actually what it came down to is I came up with a number that I was happy to give or take. And it took a while to get there, but once you're there, it's a pretty good spot for negotiations. And that's what it was. And I was, and it worked quite well.
As an add-on to that, our policy in our firm is to also, when we're setting up companies, from the beginning, to take a look at the exit strategies and to craft those buy-sell agreements into our documents as well, be it shares agreements or operating agreements for LLCs. And when we bring in new existing corporate clients, we perform an audit of that client to see if that document's in place to avoid some of the same issues that Brett could have had. And coming up with a value is a sort of a moving target, and it's everything from the appraisal value to a certificate of value to some formula that the clients create. So you can get pretty flexible in drafting that document.
And what?
Actually, just as an add-on to that, it must be a different dynamic if it's primary family members, because there are issues that come up that aren't quite the same. But so you have you approach it in a way that you must have a way to address that.
Yeah, you will, and your clients will dictate that for you. You'll be able to spot real quickly what their issues and concerns are, so you'll be able to back into it in documents.
One last note along those lines is we were able to use, when the transaction occurred, which was, I guess, 7 or 8 years after we incorporated, we were able to use the same attorney that established the first documents. So it was wonderful from a legal perspective.
Other questions?
The buy-sell, from our point of view, and I can imagine it would be different for everybody's particular need. When you're a closely held business and you're doing all the work, it's not too hard to imagine, would your business continue if you lost your partner due to death? So death is one of them. The other thing is debt. Others, who's going to pay the bills when you don't have your other party with you? And also, just to add, make it 3 Ds, is divorce. What happens when you're left wondering who controls the other portion of your business? So it's a prearranged agreement if death or something like that happens. And the reason why you want to pre-plan that is that's going to be such a traumatic time that you have to have some mechanism so you don't drift for 6 months. As far as evaluation, what we did is we came up with a formula of earnings averaged over a number of years and net value of the company, and then said this will prevail unless we meet once a year and come up with a new agreement. So what that does is what we really want to do is we want to do current valuations on an annual basis, but let's say you don't, then what's your fallback plan? So I think that was helpful in ours. And if you can't agree, if you meet and you can't agree, then you have a fallback plan.
And I'll add that covers disability as well. So you're looking at death, voluntary transfer, and disability. One of your partners become disabled and they can't sort of carry their load anymore for the company, what do you do then? So our agreements cover that scenario also. Any other questions?
We don't have a formal legal entity established. internally we take a portion of the profits of the proceeds to reinvest at the producer level, at the farmer level, but it's not a third party or an outside entity.
We don't have any direct thing. We have been accused of being a nonprofit some years, but that's not on purpose.
We don't currently have anything, but that's definitely something that we may consider in the future.
You've been in business 30 years. Green wasn't around 30 years ago. How did you re-engineer your business model to become a green company?
It was an accident. Actually, green was around. It just wasn't called that. What we did as a company, our epiphany was 1990. At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That was the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, the 20th anniversary. So it had been around some time, and we started like a lot of businesses doing small things. And then we're on our soapbox every day. We're on fire. We think this is important stuff. We want to be a different kind of business. So my partner really gets a lot of credit for pioneering this. He started off with low-hanging fruit, doing simple things, but it wasn't until we were introduced to the triple bottom line that this really began to make sense. So I can go on and on about this, but the fact that we are organic cotton, made in USA, printed with environmentally friendly inks, was a sideline that grew. Our business 10, 15 years ago was the branded accounts. We are a large volume printer, handful of very large customers. And these are branded accounts like Tommy and Gap and Polo and Champion and anybody that you would see in a department store. They would send the goods in, we would print them, package them, send them back. Unfortunately, all those customers decided to seek cheaper labor outside of the country. So we were deciding whether we were going to learn to speak Spanish or Chinese, and we decided we'd just stay at home, and we actually started growing a niche business. Our process that we developed, we intentionally developed it to be green before we knew that. We knew that we did not want to develop any chemical base that would cause a problem. So we intentionally developed it for green, and we actually successfully sold programs of our rehance process to Champion, to Gap, to Target, to Nike, but it really didn't fit their model. They're after lower price. So it took us a while to figure out how to take the business that we had and the business that we knew and figure out who would buy it. Because when you make it in the United States, it costs more. When you make it out of organic cotton, it costs more. If you print it and then dye it, it costs more. So what I've said is I've just added 3 factors to raise the price of a product when most of the market is driven on price. So we had to find a new customer base. And it's been wonderful because we don't have customers, we have advocates. And so it's a lot more fun than the old textile model. This is fun now.
Well, we want to end on time, and it's 6. Again, I'd like to thank each one of you for coming out and allowing me to present our new practice area on behalf of Walker Lamb. And hearing what the panelists had to say, I'll let Jessica conclude. But before I step down, I want to let you guys know that we brought with us some CDs that have some documentation about the practice area and the practice in general. And I'm going to leave those on the front table, so feel free to pick up a CD and a business card. And if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or send me an email. I'll be happy to speak with you. Thank you.
In Burlington.
Okay.
I just wanted to. I just wanted to echo Badrick and also thank our panelists for coming out today and for sharing their experience with us. And also want to thank Badrick for being a wonderful moderator and helping to engage them in that conversation. And I also want to thank everybody for coming out and joining us. And finally, just wanted to thank Walker Lamb for sponsoring the event and for partnering with us to host another BASE event. I'll invite everybody to stick around, please. We have some light refreshments and drinks outside, so to kind of continue the discussion. But I think our panelists can stick around for a little while if there are a couple follow-up questions. So I'll invite you to come down and speak with them, but also give you an opportunity to meet with other folks who've attended the event, so either in the auditorium or outside at the reception. partnership. So thank you so much once again on behalf of the Center for Sustainable Enterprise and the BASE program. And we'll look forward to seeing you at upcoming events